Most people talk about trying drugs the way they talk about getting their first bad haircut. Like it is a canon event. Like you simply have to do it at least once, just to be a real human. And then there is you, or maybe someone you know who has never tried drugs. Not once. Not even the cute, socially acceptable ones. Not even the ones people describe like they are sampling artisanal cheese. No weed, no pills, no random powders offered by a guy who looks like he sells car batteries out of his trunk. Nothing. And the weird part is, a lot of people assume that means one of two things. Either you are sheltered and naive, like a baby deer in the forest, or you are secretly judging everyone like a Victorian schoolteacher with a ruler. But most of the time, neither is true. For a lot of non-users, it is not moral superiority. It is not ignorance. It is psychology. A very specific mix of identity, risk perception, environment, and something I like to call not wanting to ruin your life for a vibe. Because that is what so much experimentation is. People chasing a feeling and hoping the consequences do not follow them home. So let's talk about the brain of someone who has never tried drugs. The first big factor is identity. And I do not mean the dramatic, cinematic identity where you stare into a mirror and whisper, "Who am I?" I mean the quiet self-concept you carry around every day. Some people grow up with an identity that says, "I am not that kind of person." And when your brain labels a behavior as not me, you do not experience temptation the same way. It is not a battle. It is just not an option. Like being offered to wear someone else's sweaty socks. You do not resist heroically. You simply decline, because why would you do that? Identity-based decisions are powerful because they remove negotiation. There is no internal debate. No, I will do it just this once. It is just not me. And that identity can come from upbringing, culture, personal values, or even a single moment where you watched something and thought, yeah, I am never doing that. Like watching a friend get messy, paranoid, aggressive, or just unbelievably annoying. Some people see one bad trip and their brain files drugs under nope forever. Another piece is risk perception. Most people think risk is about intelligence. Like if you are smart, you understand the risks. But that is not how it works. Risk is emotional. Some brains feel risk more vividly. They do not just understand that something could go wrong, they can actually imagine it. They can picture the consequences, like a movie trailer. And that mental simulation creates a natural break. People who never try drugs often have high harm avoidance. They notice how much there is to lose. Their health, their reputation, their career, their relationships, their sense of control. They do not view risk as spicy. They view it as expensive. And when you see risk as expensive, you stop buying it just to see what it tastes like. Then there is future orientation, which is basically the ability to care about tomorrow more than you care about right now. And this is where it gets funny, because modern life is basically one giant casino of impulsive decisions. One click dopamine, one scroll dopamine, one snack dopamine, one more episode dopamine. Drugs are the ultimate shortcut. Press button, feel something. But people who never try drugs tend to get their satisfaction from longer arcs. They like stability, progression, predictability. They do not need a chemical roller coaster to feel alive. They can sit with boredom without panicking. And that ability to tolerate boredom is more rare than people admit. A lot of drug experimentation starts because someone cannot handle stillness. They cannot handle anxiety, emptiness, awkwardness, grief, stress, social pressure. So they chemically edit reality. People who never try drugs often have different coping mechanisms. Not always healthier, by the way. Some of them just overwork, overthink, train like maniacs, become productivity robots, or turn stress into a personality. But the point is, they do not reach for substances as the first answer. Now, let's talk about environment, because no one makes choices in a vacuum. If you grew up in a place where drug use was common, normalized, or even celebrated, you have more opportunities and more pressure. If you grew up in a place where it was rare, stigmatized, or associated with real consequences, abstinence becomes the default. And here's the part people ignore. A lot of non-users are not resisting temptation daily. They simply never had the social pipeline. The offer never came from someone they trust. Or it did, but the context was wrong, because drugs are social. Most first-time drug use is not a lonely, thoughtful decision. It is a vibe, a party, a friend, a moment. And if your friend group does not do it, you do not do it. If your family is strict about it, you do not do it. If your community treats it like a serious line you do not cross it. So sometimes never trying drugs is not heroic discipline. It is social architecture. You were built in a place where the door was not open. Another huge factor is sensitivity to loss. Some people have a strong fear of losing control. They do not like not being sharp. They do not like not being able to drive home, respond to emergencies, protect themselves, or trust their own mind. And that fear is not paranoia. It is a preference for autonomy. They do not want their mood outsourced to a substance. They do not want to gamble with their personality. And yes, for a lot of people, drugs are a gamble with your personality. Most of the time, you come back. Sometimes you come back slightly different. Sometimes you do not come back at all, at least not mentally. People who never try drugs tend to hate that uncertainty. They are not anti-fun, they are anti-roulette. There's also the trauma exposure factor. This is complicated because trauma can push people both ways. Some people try substances to numb. Others avoid substances because they have seen the damage. If you grew up watching addiction, you might develop a disgust response to drugs. Not judgment, disgust. Like your body reacts. It feels unsafe. The same way you would feel looking at a contaminated needle or a dirty alley. Your brain links substances with chaos, instability, and pain. And once the association is that strong, curiosity dies. Also, some people develop a deep respect for how quickly things can fall apart. They have seen it. A parent, a cousin, a friend, a neighborhood. That experience makes them unusually protective of their baseline. They do not treat normal life like something you can casually throw into a blender. They know how hard it is to rebuild stability once you lose it. Personality traits matter too. People who never try drugs often score lower on novelty seeking. They do not chase new experiences just because they are new. They do not think I should try everything once. They think I should try what makes sense. They also tend to be higher in conscientiousness. That is the trait connected to planning, self-regulation, and caring about consequences. But here is the twist. Conscientiousness is not willpower. It is wiring. It is the brain's tendency to prioritize rules, structure, and long-term outcomes. So again, it is not always a dramatic struggle. It can be a simple internal setting where the costs feel loud and the reward feels quiet. And then there is social pressure resistance. People who never try drugs often have a stronger ability to be unpopular for a moment. That sounds small, but it is huge. Because a lot of first-time drug use is not about desire. It is about belonging. Someone offers, the room is watching. You do not want to be the weird one. You do not want to kill the vibe. So you do it. Non-users are often fine being the vibe killer. Not because they love ruining fun, but because their self-respect weighs more than a few minutes of social approval. They can sit with the awkwardness. They can say no without turning it into a speech. They do not need to justify it with moral lectures. They just opt out. And that ability is basically a superpower in adulthood, because adulthood is just peer pressure with bills. And the world is full of products designed to make you compromise yourself slowly. Drugs are just the obvious version. Now, let's address the stereotype that people who never try drugs are sheltered. Sometimes, sure. If you are isolated, strict upbringing, limited exposure, then yes, your environment did the work. But many people who never try drugs are fully aware of what is out there. They have been offered. They have seen it. They just do not want it. And the bigger misconception is that never trying drugs means you are missing out on some essential human experience. No, you are missing out on a chemical experience. That is it. You can experience awe, connection, joy, creativity, relief, and even altered states without drugs. Through sleep deprivation, love, fear, extreme exercise, meditation, music, pain, grief, and 1,000 other things that do not come with a side quest of potentially ruining your dopamine system. And yes, I know someone is gonna say some drugs are not like that, okay? Congrats. You found the one substance that makes you a better person. I'm sure it is very spiritual and not at all something you tell yourself to feel sophisticated. The point is, for non-users, the cost-benefit analysis is different. Their brain does not romanticize experimentation. It sees it as unnecessary risk. And in a society that markets risk as personality, that can look strange. Because culture constantly tells you that you should try things, that you should live a little, that you should not be boring. But here is the dark humor truth. A lot of people live a little and then spend the rest of their life cleaning up the mess. People who never try drugs tend to be the ones who quietly avoid the mess in the first place. They are not saints. They are not cowards. They're simply people whose brain is better at noticing the trap before stepping on it. And what does this profile look like in everyday life? They often prefer predictable routines. They care about sleep, performance, health, and clear thinking. They may be more anxious, not always, but sometimes, because the same brain that avoids risk can also over-monitor threats. They might be less impulsive. They might be more cautious with money, relationships, and decisions. They often choose friends carefully. They do not like chaotic environments. And again, none of this makes them better. It makes them different. Now, there's one more layer that is uncomfortable but real. Some people avoid drugs because they are terrified of what it would reveal. If you already feel like you are barely holding things together, altering your brain chemistry can feel like opening a door you cannot close. Some people have a family history of addiction or mental illness, and they know that experimenting is not just experimenting. It is testing the weak spots in their genetics, and that is not fear. That is intelligence. It is the same reason you do not test whether your car's brakes work by driving off a cliff. So if you are someone who has never tried drugs, and you sometimes wonder if you are missing out, here's the reality. You are not missing out on fun as a concept. You are missing out on a specific shortcut that comes with unpredictable costs. And the fact that you can live in a world that constantly tries to sell you shortcuts and still say no is not naivete. It is a psychological profile, identity anchored, risk aware, future oriented, less susceptible to social pressure. And in a culture that worships experimentation, that quiet resistance is both rare and powerful. Because the truth is, the world is built to make you trade long-term stability for short-term relief. Drugs are just one version. There are many. And if your brain naturally rejects that trade, then you are not boring. You are hard to hack, which might be the most underrated trait a human can have.